Hello, my name is JC McConnell, and I am the Cityworks Administrator for the City of New Braunfels, Texas. This presentation will be around the challenges that we encountered as we implemented online payments through the Cityworks PLL public access portal and the solutions that we devised to address those. This would be bridging the gap between Cityworks online payments and finance. So I'm here today with Thomas Wilson. He's with GISinc, who is our partner in this endeavor. Thomas, do you want to introduce yourself?
Thanks, JC. So as she said, my name is Thomas Wilson, and I'm the Cityworks business engineer at GISinc, and I'm really excited to be here today.
So for a little background on our story, New Braunfels has experienced incredible growth over the last 10 years, and we've consistently been among the top 5 fastest growing cities in the U.S. for several years now. Because of this, city staff have really been struggling to keep up with the pace of development. Cityworks provided us a more user-friendly and a more manageable solution than our previous permitting software, and provided the tools to allow us to offer a much-needed online presence for our customers. In early 2019, we implemented Cityworks PLL, and then in late 2019, we deployed the public access portal for PLL to give our customers online access to their permits, and specifically because we wanted to provide an online payment option for permits. When we launched public access, we opted for the Authorize.net payment platform integration that's provided by Cityworks for our primary rollout of the public access portal. That initial rollout was just to a handful of local contractors that we work with to really beta test the application and how the payment interaction worked. Our goal was to kind of determine how intuitive it was and for our users to help us identify any items that needed to be tweaked or clarified so we were delivering the best possible user experience. In early 2020, as we were moving toward a soft release to the general public, we discovered that we had an issue with the finalization of the payment process on the user end. This was leading to duplicate payments, unprocessed payments, and ultimately imbalances between what our finance department was receiving from the payment processor and the payment activity that was being reflected within Cityworks. The primary recurring problem we were seeing was happening right at the end of the payment process. When a customer's payment transaction has completed, the confirmation page displays a continue button for the customer to click on. Clicking this button is a necessary step to fully write that processed payment back to Cityworks, return the customer back to their permit in Cityworks to show the fees had been paid, and to generate their Cityworks receipt record. What we were finding was that customers were often not clicking the button to complete the payment process. Without this button being clicked, the reflection of successful payments within Cityworks was incomplete. As a result, we had a lot of folks who were manually maneuvering back to their online payments, and then they would think that they hadn't paid successfully because they couldn't see the payment there, so they would pay again. Or we had folks who would just close the payment screen altogether and had therefore no idea that their payment had not been recorded in Cityworks. Obviously, this issue was causing major headaches for our internal staff, as well as many frustrations for our customers. So what we experienced was that because of these situations, our staff was spending several hours most every day combing through hundreds of daily transaction records in each system, trying to understand discrepancies among our 3 systems reportings, and then manually reconciling what was being received in the Authorize.net settlement statements versus what was being reflected in Cityworks, and additionally reconciling against what finance had received in their daily funding deposits. Oftentimes we would have differences in these numbers from, say, a $35 payment that had been submitted twice. Cityworks only had 1 receipt for it, but Authorize.net had 2 payment transactions for it. Finance would receive $70, but there would be no record as to what the $35 overpayment was for or what to do with it. Tracking down what the extra funds were from was extremely challenging and time-consuming since there was almost no information shared among the systems aside from the date and the amount paid. This was a significant hurdle to try to get past, and it resulted in myself and other staff members spending many hours a week combing through each transaction to find these discrepancies where we could explain and then correct what was going on with the payment numbers. Obviously, this was a customer service problem. In addition to having the hassle of double payments and refunds that we had to perform, we also had situations where we weren't sure if the payment had been made. So when a customer would tell us they had made their payment, we would have to go to multiple places to verify that. Staff would look in the permit within Cityworks. They wouldn't see a payment or receipt for those fees, but then the customer would assure us they had paid online. And then this discrepancy would require us to go and look through the credit card side on the payment transactions and see if we could find their transaction and then manually update the Cityworks case before we could issue their building permit. Another customer irritant was from not being able to provide customers with a generated receipt at the time of their payment completion. While some customers were really diligent and they printed the transaction confirmation page for their records, many did not, and then they wouldn't have a receipt for their online transaction. This would result in frequent requests from customers to city staff to have their Cityworks payment receipt emailed to them manually or saved and attached to their permit so that they could print it off the public access portal. Obviously, we felt our customers deserved a better experience considering all the technology that we have at our disposal, so we wanted to ensure that these issues were addressed and that the user experience was made better. So what we defined as our problem is that we needed a solution that would automatically post the transactions back to Cityworks so that we didn't have to rely on customers manually clicking a button in order to complete the transaction. We needed to remove the human element from the process of writing back the payment completion to Cityworks. We also wanted to pull in more detailed information about the transaction itself and to store that within the Cityworks payment record. This would allow us to establish a link between the authorized.net transactions and the Cityworks payments record, which would make our reconciliation process much more straightforward and efficient, while also allowing us to identify any discrepancies much more quickly. Another enhancement that we were really looking for was some sort of proactive transaction confirmation for the customer at the time of payment. So the generation of a receipt or some sort of alert that was pushed to them as their proof of payment. We were able to do some analytical investigations to understand all the data points that we needed to capture in order to join authorized.net, our financial system, and Cityworks together. My experience is pretty deep when it comes to working with SQL databases, so I was able to see the information in the underlying Cityworks database that was available to us related to the payment requests and receipts. This, combined with the transaction data available from the processor and the information finance receives in the funding batches, allowed us to fully determine the information that we needed, but also to understand the opportunities for relationships between each of the systems. With this, we were able to create custom tracking tables in the Cityworks database to help us collect the vital information we needed to do reconciliations across the systems and come up with some technology-driven solutions. GISinc was our partner, and they were able to build an integrated solution for us that enhanced the existing authorized.net payment gateway so that we could increase the number of data values that were sent back to us from the payment gateway, such as the transaction ID, the credit card type or brand, and the exact transmission date for reconciling with the authorized.net records. This enhancement also enabled the automatic completion of the payment process, which would now write the payment information directly back to Cityworks as soon as the transaction was completed. We also spent some time speaking with the subject matter experts at Cityworks to help them understand the issues that we were seeing and for them to give us some suggestions on areas where we might be able to make enhancements or improvements to the overall process. We got some great support from the Cityworks side to help us see where we needed to go to find ways to correct or improve our core payment processes. I'm going to turn it over to Thomas now to talk a little bit about the solution that GISinc developed for us.
So as JC mentioned earlier, the solution that we came up with was really an enhancement to the existing process for integrating with authorized.net. And it allowed us to better control the data that was flowing between the two applications. And this really enabled the city not only to have a more stable and predictable payment solution, but also gave them the additional data points that they needed to make their reconciliation process much quicker and more streamlined. So the overall process that we came up with was a bidirectional integration between Cityworks and Authorize.net. So when a payment is initiated from Public Access Portal, the core permit and fee information is sent directly to the Authorize.net payment submission page. Now, when the transaction is completed by the applicant, that payment confirmation is sent instantly back to Cityworks as a successful payment transaction without the reliance on having to click the complete button. So what we did was we added some additional webhook configuration into the city's Authorize.net payment gateway, and that allows us to then send additional data points or additional information back to Cityworks. So what we did was we introduced a web service or a service in between the Authorize.net webhook and the Cityworks application to process all of those data points and then send those or write those into the custom Cityworks tables that we had configured. So this new data packet contains additional transaction information such as credit card type, which was not included as part of the out-of-the-box integration solution, but this helps drive better payment reporting and analysis that allows the city to really accomplish the reconciliation process much more easily.
So once we had built these additional enhancements into the Authorize.net payment gateway, we had a much easier time understanding when there happened to be discrepancies. But the best part about it is that we stopped seeing payments that hadn't written back to Cityworks, and therefore we stopped seeing double payments. With the transaction being automatically sent right back to Cityworks, we virtually eliminated all of our double payments, which is one of the biggest challenges that we were having. Now, when we would see some discrepancies between perhaps what finance was receiving in the funding and what Authorize.net and Cityworks were posting as payment totals, it was much easier to identify what the cause was or where those amounts might be coming from. For instance, we found that in most cases, American Express took longer to fund than the other credit card transactions. So when we were able to identify transactions by card types, it was much easier to recognize that if we were missing a certain amount on the funding side, when we looked at the subtotals for the credit card transactions by card brand, we could reconcile within a few minutes of looking into the situation, rather than spending hours poring over hundreds of transactions each day until we added up to the unfunded amount. So all in all, we've had tremendous success with our solution. Significant staff time savings were realized right away, and we went from spending hours a week reconciling to just a few minutes each day to check and see if all the numbers match, and in most cases they do. And the few times when they don't, it's very easy to determine where the discrepancy is and explain what's going on. Obviously, we've had customer experience improvements. As I said before, we've virtually eliminated the situations where people were paying their fees multiple times because the transactions hadn't written back to Cityworks, which also means our customers are not having to be issued refunds on a routine basis. And our customers aren't experiencing delays in getting their permits issued because staff can now look in Cityworks and see right away that fees have been paid. These enhancements have also helped us improve our data integrity. The information that we are collecting in Cityworks from the payment gateway has helped us identify and link all of these systems together in reporting, and we now have consistent records among the three systems that we can easily reconcile in minutes instead of hours. And now we have part 2. Naturally, as we required more payments to be made online, we saw a significant increase in the amount of the fees charged to us by the credit card processor. For the city, this amounted to several $100,000 per year in revenue that was lost to card processing fees. As budgets have tightened, our City Council recently approved passing those fees on to our customers. Because of that, we wanted to provide an option to our customers to pay online without incurring the additional card processing fee, so we look to add electronic check payments as an option online as well. As part of this resolution, the city also recently consolidated card processing throughout the city to a single vendor. Changing payment processing vendors meant we could no longer use the provided authorized.net Cityworks payment interface. While a new custom interface needed to be developed, we have been able to build upon and then further enhance the previous integration solution GISinc had developed. So we again worked with GISinc to build our custom payment interface to integrate with our new vendor, CardConnect. With this new integration, we've added a few additional transaction-related details to our custom data table, and they're now also able to email the customer a receipt for their online transaction as soon as it completes, providing instant verification for the customer of their successful payments. We went live with the new payment gateway on May 1st. Our customers are definitely taking advantage of the new e-check option, with nearly 20% of our online payments already using a check over a credit card in just the first month of its availability. I'm going to hand it back to you, Thomas, for some details on how that custom integration was built by GISinc.
So as JC mentioned earlier, for this new CardConnect integration, we were able to really build upon what we had already deployed for the integration with authorized.net. Although we were able to add additional data points to the transaction response from CardConnect, the biggest change here was the addition of the custom payment interface. So this new interface is essentially the communications handling mechanism between the two applications. So what we did was we modified the public access page to redirect users to this new payment interface. And this new interface was able to capture additional Cityworks permit information and display that to the user, as well as allow them, the user, to interact with those new CardConnect functionalities, such as the e-check option that JC mentioned earlier. And upon submission of that payment, the information is sent to CardConnect. And when CardConnect is done processing that payment, that transaction success information is sent back to the interface, and then it's forwarded onto Cityworks. So that process, through that process, we were able to add more data points into that response than we would have with authorized.net, because CardConnect has a more robust set of data points that the city has really taken advantage of. So to make this possible, we were able to expand on our existing transaction detail tables to include these additional bits of information. So as you can see here in the first image, the entry screen for the payment interface was structured to provide a clean layout while still supporting the logic to fully complete the payment transaction with CardConnect upon the user clicking the Process Payment button. So with the transaction complete, the user is notified immediately that their payment was successful and presented with a link to return back to that public access site. Now that's the middle screenshot we see here. If they choose not to use that provided link, they are redirected back to the public access site automatically after 15 seconds. And this doesn't require the user to click continue or close out of any windows. Now the new payment interface also sends the user an emailed receipt automatically following the success of their payment transaction. So this has really helped the city close the loop on the payment process. As I mentioned earlier, we were able to bring in additional transaction information from CardConnect. Now these additional data points, such as batch IDs, have helped further streamline the payment reconciliation process. And really this helps the finance department better group and report on the transaction batches, which is really needed because of the different processing and reporting timeframes of the various card vendors. So here we can see how the transaction-related data we're capturing allows the city to query the payment details from the Cityworks application and then see that it's aligned with the reporting provided by the credit card processor. And this comparison check is done on a daily basis, and now it only takes just a few minutes. So these fully reconciled reports are really made possible through the introduction of the integration enhancements we mentioned just a little bit ago. And you'll notice that all three reports are now showing the same number of transactions with the same payment amount totals. So I'll hand it back to JC to wrap things up for today.
So just to kind of wrap things up, The daily reconciliation for our online payments is now a task only requiring a few minutes each morning. Finance has the details they need to verify and book the payments to the appropriate general ledger accounts and can readily identify the deposits made back to their respective payment sets. And our staff no longer dread the daily payments reporting, and our customers have the performance and information they need to track their payments on the public access portal. All in all, this is a definite success for New Braunfels and its customers. If you have any questions about how New Braunfels has implemented our solution, please feel free to reach out to GISinc or to myself as the business analyst here at the city. We'd be happy to answer any questions or discuss our solution with you. Thank you for your time.